Hi, I'm Gary Null, and I'd like to welcome you to another program. As you can see, we're not in studio. We take our cameras around the world to bring you the most important information on health and nutrition. Today, we're going to talk about being toxic. What does it mean? And being detoxified in a toxic world. How's it done? Join me now as we explore on our television program, Detoxification, a Natural Approach.
Fortunately, for every problem that we encounter in nature, nature has provided a solution for. And we mentioned earlier in the program that a variety of neurological problems are linked to deficiencies in their antioxidant capacity. Well, there are a variety of antioxidants that have been shown to be effective to prevent the progression of neurological diseases. These antioxidants have a unique feature. They are what's called lipid-soluble antioxidants. This means that they're able to cross the blood-brain barrier, enter into the brain, and perform their functions adequately. Let me give you a list of some of the antioxidants that are important therapeutically if a person were to have a neurological disease, or if they're interested in preserving their brain because of a preventative type of therapy as well. One of the most interesting substances that's being studied in its relationship to neurological problems and preventing or actually inhibiting the progression of a neurological problem is a substance called lipoic acid. Lipoic acid is an antioxidant. It has an interesting feature. One of the most highly potent antioxidants, one of the most highly potent oxidants, pro-oxidants in the nervous system is a substance called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is elaborated by the immune system when the immune system is stimulated by a perceived danger or threat. Lipoic acid has the ability to neutralize nitric oxide and therefore is believed to play a very, very important role in neurological diseases such as Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, and Lou Gehrig's disease. Other antioxidants that are important in neurological problems include N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine is a modification of the amino acid cysteine, which is important in brain detoxification. One of the things that N-acetylcysteine does that's very, very important is it actually increases the intracellular levels of glutathione. As we mentioned before, glutathione is one of the antioxidants that's found within the mitochondria as well as within areas of brain cells to neutralize these pro-oxidants or these inflammatory oxidative substances.
Another important concept in recognizing that free radical oxidation plays such a dramatic role in the various neurodegenerative diseases is the understanding that the brain in these patients seems to accumulate what are called heavy metals and other metals too. Things like iron, mercury, lead, cadmium, and arsenic are seen in higher concentrations in patients with various neurodegenerative problems. Iron accumulation is profound in diseases like Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, and Parkinson's disease. It is for this reason that we've embarked on a treatment protocol utilizing what's called EDTA chelation, or standard chelation therapy, in patients with these conditions. The understanding, the mechanism behind this work is that by reducing those catalysts or those chemicals, the heavy metals, which enhance free radical production, we can reduce the rate of brain degeneration. So EDTA chelation therapy, more than just being useful in cardiovascular disease and peripheral vascular disease, certainly plays an important role in neurodegenerative diseases. I believe over the next 5 to 10 years that the concepts which are currently being published in the peer-reviewed neurology journals dealing with the fact that the brains accumulate heavy metals will spread to the general public, and chelation therapy will play a much more important role in limiting the free radical oxidative state of these patients and therefore slowing down the rate of progression of their diseases.
There are two enzymatic types of pathways that exist in nature that are utilized by the brain for detoxification. These include something called transsulfation and transmethylation. What that simply means is that a sulfur group or a methyl group that are donated by amino acids are attached to a toxin which allows for the body to successfully excrete this toxin through the liver or through the kidneys. The brain also uses these two enzymatic steps, transmethylation and transsulfation. There are a variety of amino acids and other substances that are effective to detoxify the brain. For instance, there's a substance called S-adenosylmethionine. This is a ubiquitous substance which is a modification of an amino acid which is found in the brain that plays a crucial step in detoxification for the brain. In fact, there are certain genetic disorders in which people have a deficiency in the manufacture of this compound, S-adenosylmethionine, and have a variety of neurological symptoms as well as cardiovascular symptoms. Well, S-adenosylmethionine actually is a substance which is widely used in Europe now for a variety of neurological conditions, including depression. It's now also being effectively studied in children with ADHD, and is also very, very effective in osteoporosis. So one substance that people who are interested in brain detoxification could look at is this compound called S-adenosylmethionine.
Colon health is very important to our overall general health and well-being. The reason being is that for optimum health is that for every meal we eat, we should have an elimination. We should have a bowel movement. For every bowel movement that we don't have, it accumulates around the colon walls and it hardens and can get rubbery. Our colon is where absorption takes place of our nutrients. It's part of our digestive system as well as where we eliminate and evacuate waste from. When our colons are blocked with rubbery hardened waste, we'll be absorbing the waste products rather than the nutrients.
The gastrointestinal system is a major immune system for the body. It's involved in really detoxifying and cleansing out substances before they reach the bloodstream. A classic example of a relationship between a gastrointestinal disorder and a neurological problem are in patients with liver disease. Patients with liver disease that eat high-protein diets develop what's called hepatic encephalopathy, which is a neurological illness characterized by confusion, lethargy, and seizures. The reason why these people have neurological problems is because their liver is no longer able to successfully cleanse out ammonia from the bloodstream. So when they eat a high-protein diet, this gets broken down to ammonia, and that ammonia normally is effectively metabolized by the liver. And when the liver is failing, this ammonia builds up and is highly toxic to the brain.
When the body becomes so full of poisons, it's difficult for the body to filter them out. What happens, the pathway of toxicity, is that first the poisons reach the tonsils, and the tonsils are overworked and they get full of toxicity. And the thymus gland takes over from there. And when the thymus gland is overloaded and full of toxicity and can't filter anymore, it backs up into the lymph system. And then the lymph system gets full. And that's our whole immune system. Water is essential to good health and good colon health. Water is something that's very hydrating. It hydrates our skin, it hydrates our bowels. Most models that I've known and talked to swear by water that it keeps you young and keeps you from getting lines and wrinkles at a young age. Also, for the rest of our body, it's very, very hydrating to our organs, especially the colon, so we can eliminate properly.
Of course, one of the common ways of manipulating the diet is to fast. And fasting does help cleanse the body. A true fast is where you consume nothing but tolerated water for several days. However, most people do much better with a modified fast where they drink some type of juice. You can use a vegetable broth, or some people even use a fruit broth when they detoxify with fasting. One caution about fasting, however, is if you are severely allergic to foods, you tend to be addicted to the foods to which you're allergic. And when you start a fast, you can have some fairly acute withdrawal symptoms. And so fasting should be accomplished with caution, perhaps with the help of a physician.
I'd like to talk a little bit about fasting and colon cleansing. A lot of people do juice fasts and water fasts and totally ignore the fact that they need to eliminate the waste material that's accumulated in the colon. The waste material winds up there from fasting, and if we don't get rid of it and flush it out, it begins to reabsorb back into the system, and it defeats the whole purpose of doing a fast.
Today, if you mention juicing to the average American, at least now they understand that it's something that is valuable for their health. Whether it's carrots, watermelons, lemons, or dark green vegetables is one of the first stages for helping to rebalance the system. You're allowing vitamins, minerals, phytoestrogens, phytochemicals, nutrients of all types that are naturally occurring in the fruits and vegetables to be brought into our body in concentrated amounts.
Here's a recipe for a great intestinal cleanser juice drink, which would be 8 ounces of watermelon, juice of a lemon, a whole lime, a grapefruit, and a 1-inch piece of ginger.
Apple juice is a real good detoxifier. This will help clean out parts of the body. Grape juice, black cherry juice, real good detoxifiers. Or we can do with different salads. Dandelion is an excellent detoxifier for the blood. There are various different herbs that we can use, like milk thistle, red clover, silymarin, which is milk thistle. The ESEAC formula, which talks about the 4 different herbs that we can use for cancer, can also be used as a detoxifier. And I highly recommend people going on just as a preventive measurement at least once a year for 30 to 45 days on detoxifying, particularly the kidney, the liver, and the blood. If we've had any alcohol dependency or drug dependency, this absolutely destroys the liver and is stored again in a cellular level. So again, we need to detoxify, we need to pull this out.
I see a lot of people that come into me for colonics that are so hard and crusty and dry inside that nothing comes out in the colonics. So I generally recommend definitely a diet rich and high in fiber and low in all these other foods that are not healthy for us. Psyllium can also help in some people. It's not good for everybody, but those who can take it, it's wonderful. It helps to moisturize the impacted fecal material so your body can pass the matter through the colon. And in conjunction with a colonic, we get a much deeper cleaning. Bentonite clay is something that's very good to do for detoxification also. What it is it's volcanic ash. And what it does is it helps to pull mucus and putrefied materials off the sides of the colon walls. For people that have eaten toxic food and are experiencing diarrhea and cramping, it's good to take 6 charcoal capsules, and that will eliminate the cramping, the diarrhea, and the gas.
Charcoal is very porous, and it can absorb up to 80 times its own weight of a toxin. For example, if you have some kind of a cut, if you put a little charcoal powder on a Band-Aid over the cut, it will help to detoxify whatever's in the cut.
In general, our culture has been showered with the idea that if you have a symptom, you should take a medicine. In fact, in general, doctors feel that unless you give a prescription, you're kind of practicing wimpy medicine. Strong doctors prescribe strong medicine, and wimpy doctors prescribe what we call nutrients, or things that are not considered to be terribly strong. Well, of course, they're not strong in the sense that they don't have as much tendency to kill you. And indeed, they have much less tendency to overburden your system. The human body's tolerance for familiar molecules is great. That's why it's very hard to find significant documentation of the toxicity of most of the things that we call nutrients or accessory nutritional factors or foods.
In natural medicine, in naturopathic medicine, we may often look at some of the things that we call diseases in Western medicine as the body's attempt to improve its health. when we start releasing toxins through the skin, when we start releasing mucus and toxins through the sinuses. We call that an infection, or we call it a skin rash, and we'll throw cortisone on it, or we'll take an antibiotic to reduce the congestion in the sinuses. However, really, what I see in my practice is if I put people on a detoxifying diet, which is first to get them off of some of the common substances that are everyday irritants, what I call the snacks, SNACCS, stands for sugar, nicotine, alcohol, caffeine, and chemicals in foods. So my first step with people is to take them off of the substances that they're using most often, and ideally all of those substances that we have in foods that really offer. Most of the foods that have those snacks in them don't really have much nutrition, but they have a lot of toxins or substances that our body has to deal with that aren't really helpful to us.
When it comes to detoxification, cleansing, and rebuilding, one of the things many people do is they start looking for other places to buy their food. Now, all the people you see here have gone through cleansing programs. We're at a very busy intersection, very noisy intersection in New York City, 72nd Street and Broadway, where the outdoor farmers market now provides hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers with fresh, natural produce, much of it organic, free of pesticides and herbicides. Now, if you look at some of the produce here, from this wonderful dill, a lot different than buying it in a jar, to the delicious fresh onions, which are so good for parasites, lowering blood pressure. We have white onions and radishes. All this is in the cruciferous family, meaning that the phytochemicals help eliminate many of the bacteria in our body, cancer cells, and viruses that lead to disease. I mentioned in the introduction that if you ask what are the three leading causes of death in America, people would say heart disease, cancer, and either infectious disease or diabetes. That would be correct, but what is the cause of heart disease, cancer, infectious disease, diabetes, AIDS? It is frequently due to defects in our immune system because an overburden of toxicity.
The type of food that really you should eat, and that is a positive thing to do to help you detoxify, is eating foods that are, quote, organic. Now, what do I mean by organic? Two things. One is that there are no added pesticides or hormones or chemicals or any excessive products that are sprayed on these vegetables or given to cattle or given to poultry during the processing. And when we have vegetables or fruit or any kind of poultry or meat that's grown commercially, the problem is we're not just getting the food, we're also getting these pesticides that are in the foods, as well as when they feed cattle, they give them hormones and antibiotics, and they eat pesticide-ridden grain. And these are all the extra things, and these are what all the toxins are coming from.
The things that we should eat for optimum colon health are a lot of leafy green vegetables, fresh fruit in moderation. There again, if we eat too much fruit, it can also set the flora off balance, so the flora then won't do its job fighting off viruses and colds and things like that.
On any detox program I lead, one of the first things I do is get people off all gluten, like wheat, oats. And the reason for that is so many people have allergic reactions. It sets up chronic fatigue. Not chronic fatigue syndrome, but after you eat wheat, you generally get a brain fatigue. So you feel like you're tired, you want to take a nap. Well, think of the people that are always having like a sandwich for lunch, bread for breakfast, or a bagel for breakfast, a pasta for dinner. It's all wheat. Now, you've all known what happens when you give up wheat for a week, right? You go through some headaches, some fatigue, withdrawal, your body goes through something like a healing crisis, but then you come up on the other end of that with more energy than what you've had in a long time, right? Suddenly, energy you never knew you were capable of experiencing, you now can experience, you can now have. So I want you to see what it's like to get off dairy for a week, sugar for a week, all wheat in all forms for a week, all beef for a week, all chicken for a week, and see if you don't see an enormous difference. Though the first couple of days you may go through a little fatigue, withdrawal symptoms, but I'll show you how you can take niacin, vitamin C, vitamin B6, aloe vera, quercetin, pycnogenol, the nutrients that can help us detoxify without gross harmful effects like bifidus bacteria, the polysaccharides in the intestine, the psyllium, the garlic. All this helps reduce our withdrawal effects.
There are a variety of fats that we ingest in our diet. There are saturated fats and there are unsaturated fats. Clearly, saturated fats are injurious and harmful to the brain. The reason why they're harmful to the brain is for several reasons. One is that saturated fats reduce the fluidity of cell membranes. As we mentioned earlier before, cell membranes are the receptors that respond to neurotransmitters and other brain chemicals to produce a desired effect within the brain. When a cell membrane, which is chiefly composed of various lipids and fat materials, loses its fluidity, it becomes less able to modify itself and produce its desired effect when a neurotransmitter binds to its receptor. Well, how does one affect fluidity of these cell membranes? We now know that the composition of our diets, and specifically the composition of the lipids in our diets, whether we eat saturated fats or unsaturated fats, actually changes the lipid composition of our cell membranes. When a person has a high saturated diet, this actually changes the fluidity of the cell membranes within neurons, and it makes neurotransmitters less likely to be responsive in their interaction with the cell membrane receptor. So another beneficial way of improving the brain's functioning and optimizing brain wellness, as well as detoxifying the brain, is by looking at a person's composition of fat in their diet.
Whole grain products such as whole wheat, brown rice, millet, quinoa, beans, things in their most whole state rather than denatured, unfibrous foods.
So in the process of looking at a step-by-step approach, number one is to eliminate any common abusive substance, sugar, nicotine, alcohol, caffeine, or chemicals. Number two, look at any food that you're maybe using too much of or abusing, and particularly cow's milk and milk products and wheat. And take a break from these. Increase the amount of fruits and vegetables in your diet and drink good water, up to 6 to 10 glasses a day, ideally away from your meals, 2 or 3 glasses when you wake up in the morning, and two glasses half an hour to an hour before lunch and dinner, and maybe 1 or 2 glasses in the evening. You're going to chew your food well, you're going to take time and eat, and you're going to eat very little at night. After dinner, that should be the end of your eating. You can have some tea. If you're hungry, maybe have an apple or a piece of fruit, and drink some water. And the idea of having a 12 to 14-hour period between what you eat at night allows your body to digest and assimilate everything, and that will reduce greatly the amount of toxicity that we generate.
Avoiding white flour products, especially pasta, which everybody's on a craze about in our country right now. Pasta is the ultimate food. To me, it's the worst thing you can put in your body. There's no fiber in it to help it sweep through the colon. You might as well just open your mouth up and pour cement down your throat. That's what happens in your colon. It's very, very constipating. Things don't move through, it has no nutritional value, and it's very detrimental to the intestinal flora.
When we're also low in some of the protective nutrients, vitamin E, vitamin C, beta-carotene, selenium, and zinc, which are the commonly known antioxidant nutrients, then these substances can cause more irritation and affect cells. And the most sensitive cells, the T cells, the B cells, and some of the other cells that release immunoactive substances, these are possibly more damaged from the irritating molecules, just as generally cell membranes that offer, when a cell membrane is intact with the proper amino acid, fatty acid balance, it's much more protective, or it has better defense against viruses getting into the cells and dividing and then spreading throughout our body. by using our cell mechanisms to replicate themselves.
There are some substances that the body uses in the detoxification process which are quite valuable for getting rid of toxins from the body. And again, I'm talking not just about toxins that come from the outside, but toxins that come from the inside. That is generated by our own chemistry. Actually, much of the chemistry that's devoted to these two compartments, inside and outside toxins, overlaps a lot, so the chemistry is more or less the same. Sulfate in the diet, for example, glycine, an amino acid. Reduced glutathione is one of the major carriers of things that we don't want in our body. And it's very important to remember that this process of getting rid of things is not, as many people would imagine, just a matter of sort of smashing it up to take it out of the body, cutting up the molecules in little pieces. It is a synthetic process in which the bad chemicals are joined with a carrier that the body provides, such as the ones I just mentioned, sulfate, glycine, reduced glutathione, and this carrier ushers the toxin out of the body. In certain instances, the carrier is allowed to come back and take another load. But if the toxin is an outside chemical, like lead or cadmium or mercury or certain kinds of pesticides and so on that are not part of the body's chemistry and are not part of the body's vocabulary, really, then the reduced glutathione has to go to the dump and stay there. So it's as if you have a dump truck full of trash. The dump truck goes to the dump, and the dump truck stays there with the trash. It's a very expensive operation if you view it from that perspective.
Free radicals are basically unstable molecules that are produced from the process of toxicity and detoxification. They can be generated from regular exercise, from exposure to smoke and smog and car exhaust, paint fumes, outgassing carpets, freshly painted rooms. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of substances that we may be exposed to in our daily activities.
Picaginol is a highly potent antioxidant which is useful in a variety of neurological problems. We mentioned before lipoic acid, N-acetylcysteine, vitamin E. Tocotrienols are important, which are a derivation of vitamin E. Coenzyme Q10 is also a very important antioxidant.
There's a lot more to the story. We can only cover so much in a single program. But join us next week. We're always sharing more on health and nutrition, ways to improve your life. I'm Gary Knoll. Have a nice week, everyone.